The moon is a harsh mistress, a military base, a computer. From Groom Lake, the armed forces send up commuters. Lunar particle beams cause floods, quakes, droughts. Weather control is population control. Have you figured that out? It should be front page in the space age. At this stage, somebody gotta rattle your cage. Mars was a way station for the Anunnaki from Nibiru. They'll be back there before long, then they'll be here too. Pray tell, what's with the face on the plains of Cydonia? Was it put there by reptiles who think that they own ya? It should be front page in the space age. At this stage, somebody gotta rattle your cage. When the aliens start landing, remember many will be holograms. Be mindful that NASA is a cover for the real space program. They're already
Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and all forms of life that have access to a TV screen at the moment or to the internet, where they might be observing these proceedings as they stream live across the ether. Ethereally is how that usually happens. I'm Paul Colby, joining you once again on 13th of September in the year 2012 for an exciting episode of Public Affairs here on the Public Access Channel. You know, we get together a lot to rattle cages, and we've been doing that for several years anyway, so some of you tune in just because you never know exactly what you're going to hear when we get going here. And I'll have to be honest here, I'm not sure I know what you're going to hear, because I'm just looking at this outline, provided, of course, by my very dedicated and very competent staff. But today I had to be in a lot of places at once. It just goes with the territory. And so some of this is going to be new to me, but I told them what I wanted to talk about tonight, and they're filling in some points for me here. I know they've produced some beautiful graphic work to supplement whatever I'm going to say in such a verbally austere way. How about that? Anyway, our prime discussion tonight is going to be about the upcoming presidential election, because here we are past Labor Day, and that's, of course, the time when we as a country always honor the women who are in childbirth or who have been in childbirth, and along with working men. But this year it seems like some of the scales have been tipped, and some of the formats have been tinkered with as we approach the issues important to men and women in this country. And so I'm going to talk about largely some efforts by Republicans and Democrats to change the outcome of this presidential election race. And if I have time, I'll go into some other subjects that are right out there on the horizon, almost at your doorstep, almost in your newspaper, but not quite. So let's start with the big picture here. We've got a presidential campaign going on, and the most obvious thing about it, and has been obvious for, since about a year ago, is that the Republican Party, because they lost in some key states last time around, have been going whole hog in an effort to keep some of the people who voted in the last election from voting in this one. It's called voter suppression, but of course the Republicans call it by different names, and what they talk about a lot is things like voter fraud. And you know what they're really interested in, though, is keeping minorities and aliens and other people from necessarily doing what they might otherwise do, that is to say, vote for somebody other than the Republican candidate. And of course, I'm not saying that the Democrats don't have their own sins and of commission and omission, but I want to start where the action is, because we've covered this quite a little bit in one of our past shows where we talked about the fact that there is very little of what could be called voter fraud in the United States, if what we're talking about is voters behaving in some way that is fraudulent. I think you'll remember when we summed it up, we talked about a Justice Department study that covered a period of 5 years between 2002, 2007, analyzing 300 million votes and coming to the conclusion that there were 86 cases of voter fraud. We quoted a couple of studies that pointed out it was potentially even less than that, and then we gave you the benefit of the doubt by reviewing the study by the National Republican Lawyers Association, which looked at 400 cases over a decade. That's what they could come up with of potential abuse. And those 400 cases, excuse me, mostly cases that were prosecuted, not necessarily cases that were justifiable in the sense of representing voter fraud. Those came down to representing approximately one instance per state per year. So we can pretty much say voter fraud is a myth, but we do know that the Republicans need to convey to the public a real deep sense of believing that there is voter fraud if they are going to get away with voter suppression. But since there have been court cases on this, we know that, for example, in our own state of Texas and in Wisconsin, that in respect of the legal process, some of these voting ID requirements that are going around these days in 11 states are tossed out thanks to our judicial process. There may be TV shows coming up, I think maybe next fall. You might see, for example, you might see the X-Files come back with Scully and Mulder going around the country trying to find some mysterious voter, or 86 voters who seem to have committed fraud on the United States government or their state government or their city government, whatever. Or we could have a Star Trek family, a new generation of Star Trek cruisers who go all around the galaxy and the universe attempting to locate cases of voter fraud, because the Federation says there must be some voter fraud out there, even though we haven't been able to find it. Or maybe Sherlock, maybe the new Sherlock Holmes positioned in modern-day London can come from that viewpoint and find out more than anybody has so far about the fraudulent voting that's going on here. So you see what I'm getting at. We're talking about a myth, but we know what the ultimate goal is. The Republicans would like to take those minority voters and redirect the ballots that they're going to cast, and they would like to do that with aliens too. So let's look at both of these minorities. You know, when you analyze politics, or when you watch people on CNN analyze politics, or God forbid, when you watch some of the far right, far left analysts, you hear one set of parameters that are used to describe minorities. And so we think we know what that means. But these shrewdly calculating political advisors know of all sorts of niches out there of potential voters who might be trouble, in this case for the Republican Party. And I want to explain what some of those are, because I've gained some access to some pretty sensitive files that they have. I want you to take a look at this slide here. This describes microwave oven repairmen. Well, you wouldn't think of this as an important group, but let me tell you one thing about it. I've discovered after researching this topic that there are almost no microwave repair women. This is kind of a men's club here. And because of what these people do, digging into the innards of convection and microwave ovens, there's something that bonds them together, or at least makes them think that President Obama has done a terrific, I need to say, bang-up job first time around. You can see the numbers, and you can see why the Republican Party would be a little antsy about letting microwave oven repairmen vote. that's just one example. For example, that may be something you hadn't thought about, transgender bartenders. Now, it's hard to, in some cases, it's hard to give an exact size for this voting demographic, but we think this one is pretty large, or at least the Republicans do, and what bothers Romney and company right now is that 75% almost of that group are already leaning to President Obama. So when these people make political decisions and position themselves, what they try to do is reach these niches. That's one example, but there are others. Let me tell you about raccoon trainers. You probably know some. I mean, almost everybody. Well, let me think about that. I don't think I know a raccoon trainer as such, but I know some other trainers, and they probably work in similar ways to the raccoon trainers, except not with raccoons. And one thing I found interesting here, even though there is an overwhelming support for President Obama among this group, there seems to be a small percentage who think it's 2008 and are still leaning towards President Bush. I'm not sure if it was, which George Bush it was, but anyway, most of them are leaning to the president. That's bad news for Romney. Here's another one. This group is large, very large group, young banjo players, estimated to be in the many hundreds of thousands and spread all over some of the swing states, and we'll be getting to those not too long down the road here. These people, the young banjo players, it must be pointed out, have been in the Democratic column for, the last 40 or 50 years. Now, that's different from the microwave oven repairmen, even as late as the Nixon era, were still profoundly inspired by the Republican Party, and something about Watergate and using tape to, work on the doors. I think that's what did it. That and some of these people like Howard Hunt. Well, anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked, but this group, the young banjo players, has always been a problem. It's just that when Mr. Romney is the candidate, then the numbers shoot up to 77% on the other side. And there are also groups that you might think are small that turn out to be large. For example, we've got artists formerly known as Prince, and I should say formerly known as Prince or Snoop Dogg. And you might think it's a small group. I did when I first read about it. And it turns out there are almost 500,000 artists formerly known as Prince. I mean, you probably know one of them pretty well, but my point is there are lots of them. I mean, it might be one of those copycat type phenomena, but in any case, they're all lined up solidly behind the president. So you can see that in moving yourself to the center or to the left or to the right, as these candidates do in a big election like this, what you're trying to do is to move these people that are likely to vote against you, and you'd like to get them, out of the voting booth if at all possible. Now, it's not just these minorities. As I said before, there has always been this issue, at least there has been for all of this decade so far, and it's a short decade. So let's say this decade and last decade, problem with aliens. And we know by now, because I've mentioned this also in past shows, that underlying that facade that's on top that you might see on your regular CNN or other superficial newscasts, there is really a wariness on the part of the Republicans that is both about undocumented workers and workers who are not from around here at all, not even from this planet. So, with respect to that first bunch, the undocumented aliens who are working here in the United States, well, I just got to tell you that there is an interesting dimension to this, and that is that illegal immigrants actually paid more taxes than Mitt Romney in 2010. And why is that? Well, we all know the numbers that we've been hearing from the presidential candidates, and actually we haven't heard it from Obama because I don't guess he made enough money to be that excited about bragging about it. But having said that, these undocumented aliens pay about $6 to $7 billion in Social Security, about $72 billion to Medicare and unemployment insurance. That's because of the way things are structured for them to get paid, you know, and using their taxpayer identification numbers and their employee identification numbers, it's possible to track this. So that is a lot of money. And of course, they're not eligible, so to speak, for the Social Security or for the Medicare or for the unemployment insurance. Of course, there's some so-called fraud that takes place, and they do get some emergency medical services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you can see my point here, and that is these people, these undocumented aliens, are paying taxes. So if there is a problem here, you know, the idea here is to keep any of them from voting. We're talking about strategy here. But they don't, I think they do not need any kind of photo ID. All these people would need, and some others have said this in the political process, you know, some of the pundits like myself have said, well, why not just bring your tax returns? Because you've been paying taxes, you could just bring the tax returns from the last, say, 10 years as proof that you can vote, okay? And, well, where we run into a hurdle, of course, is that the Republican Party, led by Mr. Romney, the main formulator at the moment, the formulator guy, if you like to call it that, has said, what, tax returns? How important is that? So that idea is not going down well, even though I would say that all of these undocumented aliens who can bring in their tax returns, well, that pretty much says they ought to get to vote. Don't you think? Well, but there's another side to this. And in thinking about this question, I had to really dig deep here, because we also are talking about the off-planet aliens, okay? The people who don't come from, you know, Pasadena or Bel Air or Connecta Bridge. No, sir, they come from places like the Orion Belt or the Pleiades or you name it. And they seem to be here. And the thing about these people is they can disguise themselves, you know, so that it's hard to know how many of them are here. For example, they can look like that if they want. They could pretend to be me as an ancient Egyptian if that were necessary for some, or they can look like this. Look at that one. See? I mean, they're not bound by the same physiology that we are, and if they want, they could even look like this. Look at this. See? What I'm telling you is, if they, and, okay, look, they're not all shapeshifters, no. As a matter of fact, some of them probably naturally look just like us. That's what I've been told when I rode on some of the spaceships, you know, with the guys who looked pretty familiar, and they said, yeah, for Alpha Centauri, it's just 57 billion down the road this way, you know, and yeah, we all look like this. So, indeed, there are some of them, I reckon, who look pretty much like us, but as I've said, there are others who use these disguises. And so I started thinking about it. Well, how many of these people are there here, and why are the Republicans so bothered? You know, because one, you know, I'll tell you what bothers, especially the neocon Republicans. It's this one world government idea, one world order, that sort of thing. Their shackles, oh man, when you talk about a one world government. But these guys from outer space living here now in, say, Detroit, Buffalo, Santa Monica, wherever, these people, they're probably, I've been told on one of the other rides on the spaceship, and I can't really talk about it too much, that there is that there is a sort of a one world government, and a lot of these species don't much like each other, but they don't blow each other up anymore, which is something probably be good for us to learn, okay? And I'm surprised it's not an issue in the presidential campaign. Boy, I'm sidetracked on that one. Why aren't we talking about that? Anyway, here's what I'm trying to get at. I dug deeper, and I got access to a very sensitive document. In fact, this is an eyes-only document that the president was supposed to see, and it comes from somewhere in the military. I can't tell you any more than that. And let's see, I'm going to read along here. I know you can't make it out completely, but this document seems to say that the current estimate is that maybe 8% of our population here in America might be off planet, okay? And that number has held steadily for nearly 4 years. And it goes on to say, I mean, I've read the whole thing. It says a lot of these aliens, well, a small number of these aliens, frankly, hold important positions. But here's the clincher. About 8% of the population seems to be the same number as the number of people unemployed for the last 4 years, also holding steady. And so finally, it dawned on me why the Republican Party in this presidential election cycle is so concerned, because all of the unemployed may well be not Americans at all. But in the current context, disguised as who they are, they might have a chance to vote. And so, and of course they would vote for, you know, a big government and stuff like that, because they are already on board with some of those concepts, you know. So you can see the problem that it's produced for the Republicans. And I think, and I know you're probably grateful that I figured this one out for you, because a lot of people don't understand why that unemployment number stays where it does. Is because a lot of these freeloaders who came from other worlds probably aren't interested in working anyway. They're not even looking for work. They're just looking for a handout, because where they come from, they don't have hot dogs, for example. They don't even have sushi, and they don't have minor league soccer. So these people just hang around for the good stuff, and I understand they have to go back ultimately, but not for 4 years anyway. So we've covered the fact that the Republicans are trying to keep minorities from voting this year, and they're trying to keep aliens of all kinds from voting this year. And to keep up some sort of credible posture on this, they have to convince people that there is some way that the political process is going to be overrun, that all sorts of folks will be voting who shouldn't, and they'll push out Mr. Romney and let that caretaker president stay in a few more years. And I'll tell you what really bothers them. They have their own polls inside, and I don't know if they really believe this, but somebody does. Maybe Karl Rove is responsible. They expect a dramatic turnout of dead voters this year. A lot of dead voters, about 46 million of them. And they think that these dead voters will pretend to be either Latino or black, which would not bode well for the Republican Party this year. So you can see the conundrum they're in. Now, frankly, I don't see how anybody but a few of the inside advisors who are probably, you know, twisting arms and whispering them in ears can give somebody can convince one of these major party candidates that something like this is going to happen. But maybe these guys just want to hear something like that, so they have something to tell John Q. Public. And so I have to think about this one out loud too, because it seems to me that many of the dead, even assuming they could vote, I think many of the dead are no longer interested in politics. I mean, and how many of them were in the first place? You see what I mean? To take it a little bit further, those who were interested in politics, among the dead who would vote this year, probably would prefer another dead person if they were to vote. So any attempt to skew the process here is suspect. Okay, that's what I'm telling you. All of this is suspect. But one thing that occurred to me while I was pondering these questions and looking it over was the recent episode that concerns Morgan Freeman, the burst of publicity out there on the internet, Facebook, and everywhere else, suggesting that Morgan Freeman was no longer among the living. And it was taken seriously by quite a few people, and it just, it made me think again about how easy it is. Now, let me tell you something. There are websites out there that you can go to. If you ever have a doubt about whether somebody is alive or dead, I believe that's even the name of the website, Alive or Dead, where you can go check and see if somebody is still alive. In the case of Morgan Freeman, Morgan is still alive. But just think about it in your own, say, list of contacts, or on your phone where they're listed, or in your Facebook pages and in your Skype contacts. You probably have some people who are no longer among the living. I know I do, and I keep them there just so that I can communicate with them through the ether. But I don't always expect a response, and I don't really expect them to be voting, although some of them from the other side of the veil do tell me who they think I should vote for. So at least some of the dead are still interested in politics. Well, I guess that covers a whole lot about the backgrounder for how people are positioning themselves right now, why people want to suppress some votes, all right? And there's another dimension to this positioning, or this posturing, or whatever you want to call it, and that has to do with targeting the swing states. You hear that on your news talk all the time right now, targeting the swing states. Well, the first thing I think of when I think about that is where the swingers are, you know, like New York and California and Nevada, North Carolina, site of the recent convention, you know, some of the really hot spots. But I guess, having had my staff research this, it would appear that swinging, that philosophy of having multiple partners, for example, is pretty widespread in these United States, even in some of the places that appear to be what we once would have called Bible Belt states, or ultra-conservative, or red states, where that kind of behavior is no, frowned upon, but still happens among at least the swinging portion of the population. And some people have told me, I haven't been able to verify this, that this year there have been a surprising number, after, say, the Occupy movement brought many people out into the streets and made them comfortable with being out in the streets, that there have been any number of totally nude political rallies that I haven't actually seen on TV. So I can't tell you that that's true. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that the candidates of both parties are trying to get to the swing voters. Even some of our antique figures, in a number of restrooms I've been in lately, I've seen all sorts of functions that Dick Cheney seems to be arranging, and I've got a pretty good idea of who he might be voting for when he says, "Let us pray." But it's obvious that all of the people are going after the swing voters. And whether it's swing voters or swinging voters, either way, you know, in the modern age, you've got to be pretty hip to what other people are pretty hip to. For example, that includes music. Now, lately, you can imagine that Mitt Romney is paying attention to younger generations. For example, his colleague and co-conspirator and vice presidential candidate, Mr. Ryan, has different things on the iPod than he does. And so in researching what Mitt Romney might have on his iPod, you know, which, because you're going to position yourself by being hit. I mean, who knows? Your iPod could be stolen. His could be stolen. President Obama's could be stolen. Mr. Ryan's could be stolen. Even Joe Biden's could be stolen. And people would obviously publicize what was on there. And so I came across a story that really blew me away the other day. Did you know? I mean, and this is in the New York Times back in August. An important piece of work on the real Mitt Romney. And I just want to tell you that David Brooks covers a lot of subjects, but only one just grabbed me when I saw it, and that was that Mr. Romney once canceled a corporate retreat at which ABBA had been hired to play. And why? He said that he found the band's music too angry. Too angry. My goodness. Well, I got to tell you, every once in a while, Mitt and I agree on something. You know, I've always thought that behind that sugary, wholesome veneer on the outside, with all of the jubilant, harmonious, catchy tune making, there seemed to be a kind of a bitterness, a sort of a rage against. Well, you know, I started looking at the internet to see if other people felt that way, and in fact, there are some composites out there, people's lists of the angriest of the ABBA songs, and this blew me away. For one thing, I think the angriest ABBA song of all, "Dancing Queen," which I mean just spews venom, is not even mentioned here in the top 5. But here's my point. I can see why Mitt Romney would not want any of these things on his iPad. I expect he doesn't have them there, and if he did, I'm sure he's erased them. For example, "Take a Chance on Me" sounds like some sort of a plea, I mean, to against your better judgment, rolled the dice for this guy who's just run Bain Capital and not any, well, anyway, and knowing me, knowing you. In other words, knowing me, that I have all of these millions and you have, you know, or the winner takes it all. But okay, this just got me more and more interested, and so my staff, they went out and they found some stuff that I wouldn't have thought was possible to find. I'm going to talk about several people's iPods right now. Mitt Romney used to have, I mean, mostly elevator music, that's what we've heard, but he did have some Beatles on there, and one of them was "Baby, You're a Rich Man." And apparently, he's thinking to himself, now that, I don't want to be caught with that, so I'm going to change it to "Help." So he substituted "Help." He's got a Eurythmics tune on there too, one of my favorite, "Would I Lie to You?" But I don't know, the staff was not clear whether he's adding that or taking it away. And the Pretenders song, "Don't Get Me Wrong," yeah, I can see why he did that. Another one, I don't quite understand this, an old tune from Peter Gabriel, "Shock the Monkey." I'm not sure, I mean, like I say, I just don't get that at all. And then there is one of those real, I mean, there's a lot of old-time stuff there, elevator music, but you might remember a tune, "Who Can I Turn To?" Sammy Davis covered that, among others, "Who Can I Turn To?" And oddly enough, there's also one from a punk rock group I don't know the name of. I mean, I don't recognize the name of them, but they do a version of that song called "Who Can I Turn Into?" And I think that probably would embarrass Mitt quite a lot. So according to my sources, he's also erasing that. But you know, his vice presidential candidate, you know, he's already taken some tongue lashings Rage Against the Machine, one of his favorites, he's not one of their favorites. Let's put it that way. So some of the popular tunes on his iPad don't really fit the mail. Well, here's an example. Mitt Romney, apparently, by my sources here, has told him not to play AC/DC's Highway to Hell while he's talking about the Romney-Ryan economic plans anymore, because it just doesn't seem to resonate. Now, President Obama, he's aware of this issue himself, so I know he's added a couple of tunes lately. I have this on very good authority. One, he added Bruce Springsteen's "Born in the USA." I'm not sure. I'm not sure why he added that. Wait, I think I do get that. Yeah, and then there's an old R&B number from the chairman of the board called "Give Me Just a Little More Time," and I'm told he's added that. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. When you're when you're targeting, you've got to go in there and you've got to put on the right suit. How about we say it that way? Put on the right suit. I like that. I might use it. I just did use it. Okay. All right, having said that, talking about the voter suppression efforts, talking about looking good for the people you need to look good for to switch the votes in an otherwise close election, well, there's another dimension to it, and you may not know about this. This year, we're going to see wholesale changes at the polling places because of what's been going on this year. So, first thing you know, that Citizens United decision a few years ago has really shaken things up, and you know that right now corporations or people, or at least they think they are, and as a result of that, a lot of corporations apparently have decided to vote this year. They didn't just invest in particular candidates, buy myself a congressman and buy myself a senator and buy myself somebody on the FDA, that sort of thing. Now they want to actually vote. And these corporations, it's going to be hard for them to vote. Well, think about what a corporation looks like in the first place. That's what you think of when you see a corporation. And so, first of all, if these guys, and all right, now let's be particular here. So the only corporations here that can vote, they have to be old enough. Okay, so not all of the corporations are getting a chance, but some of them certainly are being aggressive, and they want to vote. They know that this year the Koch brothers have been throwing around so much money, to defeat President Obama, that they want to get in on the action too. They want to go out there to the booth. I keep saying they. Well, it really isn't that simple. Now that particular building there, that houses some of the secret wealth of somebody I can't actually name right here on the show now, but you can call me after we're done and I'll tell you whose it is. It's offshore, and it might be in the Bahamas or the St. Thomas or Virgin Island. Well, I shouldn't go any further, but let's say this building wants to vote, okay? It's not likely that you could get most of the corporate structures into a voting booth, okay? And so a lot of them have suggested, well, we'll just send a person instead, a proxy, if you like, a corporate representative to the polls to vote for us. Well, that sort of brings us back around to a nagging legal question. If they are structures or organizations and not actually people, and so they have to send a person to vote for them, then how did they get to be people if they're, you see what I mean? If they, but here's the other thing. Some of these corporations that have decided they're going to vote this year, well, they weren't going to go down and cast one vote. Some of these corporations, and I'm not going to name names here because, there are legal proceedings going on, but some of these corporations said, I'm not one person, I'm 285,000 people. You see what I mean? So they want to have it not only both ways, they want to have it three ways. I'm a corporation, but I'm a person, but I'm sending a corporate representative to the polls for me to vote, but it's not one vote, it's 185, 285,000, 4 million. That's how big I am. That's how, so I don't think we're going to see it easily resolved this first year. There's going to be some challenges when some of these corporations decide to vote. So you can see that. But you know, money is playing a big role in all of this stuff in the political system. You know, all of these campaigns, all of these decisions made by administrative agencies, etc. Money is paying. And it looks like the ordinary you and me type of people, we're not getting the benefit of all of this money that's suffusing politics and being infused into politics and is, greasing the wheels. How do you like those? And so there are some initiatives in various states this year to try to make it look like things are being done for the ordinary voter. For example, it's in Ohio, for example, this year, and you can look it up. I don't know if you'll find it. It's so sensitive that it may not be news yet. But in order to convince people that they really have power like these giant corporations do, one lucky voter in the state of Ohio is going to cast his ballot for president and whatever else he's going to cast the vote for, but it will be equal to 250,000 voters. Now that is a novel idea. I kind of like that. It has that lottery dimension that so many people like. You know, the chance that one day I go to work at 9 o'clock, having gone in on the van with somebody or taken the bus, and I do my menial chore, and I go home and I find out that I now have $19 million. Well, kind of the same thing here. You see what I'm saying? The people who have the chance will go out and vote, and they just know I might be the one who changes this next election. Another way money has played into this, you know, a lot of people know that they don't have money, they'll never have the same influence as these big dogs who are in the political game. No, they won't have that, but they do like a bargain when they see it, or they like a deal when they see it. And so at least 11 states this year are going to have more than one voting line. When you go to the polls, if you're willing to pony up, and it varies between $250 and $150, you'll be able to get in the fast line. You see what I mean? You won't have to wait with everybody. Like, you know what it's like going down to the Department of Public Safety here in Texas when you have to get your driver's license renewed, okay? And of course, that's one reason why all of this voter ID stuff became an issue. You know that. It's not something a lot of people want to do, go get another card if they don't drive a car, et cetera, et cetera. But, just understand here, a lot of people are going to fork over the $10 or the $100 if they can get in the line here, and they're through voting at 9 o'clock, and they go home while everybody else is still standing in line. Pretty nifty for those states that are doing it. Now, that's not the only place, though, that changes are being made. With the Occupy movement this year, you saw a lot of people going into the streets, and they erected tent cities so they could keep occupying places. And I think that is going to be where this next idea came from, because in the last election, presidential election, you'll remember that a lot of people complained that there weren't enough voting booths, or there weren't precincts open where they were supposed to be open where they could vote. And so people complained endlessly. And in 15 different states this year, they are erecting a bunch of, well, you know, it's sort of like, when you put up portable restrooms at a big concert, you're going to have these portable voting facilities for areas where there weren't enough voting precincts or voting booths, and you can tell right there, these are high class. Well, I mean, there's only so much you can do with a limited budget, but obviously those states are making an effort, or pretending to make an effort, to accommodate the people who really need to vote but have had trouble in the past. Now, we've talked a lot about the Republican Party's influence this year and their efforts to pull out one segment of voters who weren't supercharged last time and shut up a bunch of people who were supercharged about Obama last time. So as an inducement to make sure they get out the vote, teabaggers will be able to vote this year in 19 states by just going to the Chick-fil-A. And there's 1,600 Chick-fil-A locations across the country, so that's going to be a really good deal for all of those people who, already know that they're voting for Mr. Romney while holding their noses, but having some fried chicken just after they cast that ballot. You can see how it all works. I mean, it's a beautiful system, really. Now, there are states like Texas here where police have always been able to stop in at the donut shop, as you know, and feel welcome, or even the cafeteria. So this year, at all of the donut shops in Texas, this was just recently announced by Governor Perry, police will be able to cast their ballots. Save them a lot of time, it will. I mean, they can get right back to the patrolling duties that they have, armed with some donuts and having done their civic duty in short order because there's no lines there to wait. Of course, this year, hackers, well, in all years, computer hackers, of course, have an advantage because they can vote from home, or they can vote from any internet cafe for that reason, for that matter, because, even after everybody votes, from the scandals about Diebold and other voting machine manufacturers, that things can be pretty tricky after the votes are cast, because nobody can be sure that they're actually going to be correctly tabulated. Okay, so in the past, hackers have been able to influence elections by doing work after the voting, but this year, in about 22 states, they'll be able to go online and distort the voting results while they're still in progress. There are all sorts of new, interesting concepts being tried out this year in some other states. For example, people who can't make up their mind between Obama and Romney in 6 or 7 states will be able to vote tie. Now, I haven't been able to find out exactly how this is going to affect the ultimate counting because, it's like one of those football games. In the old days, in college football, you could have a record that said won, lost, and tied. Nobody wants to leave things tied anymore. That's why we have overtimes. But apparently this year, enough people are still sitting on the fence and troubled by voting for either of the major candidates that instead of voting for a third party, if they don't want to do that, they can just say tie. Okay? That should produce some interesting results. And in several pilot programs in Wyoming, in Florida, in Colorado, in Michigan, and I probably have all of those wrong because some of this isn't even correct, people will be able to skip a year. For example, if you don't like the choices this year, you will be able to say, I'm passing. It's like in Scrabble or any other board game. You say, I don't have any cards right now. I don't have any tiles right now. I don't have a good move right now, so I'm going to pass. But the thing about the voting changes is, if you pass this year, you get 2 votes next year. This is one that I think might catch on. I mean, it's got a lively spirit, doesn't it? It's boisterous and it's robust, and it doesn't have that strain of anger like we hear in so much of the ABBA music. Another option being produced for voters in Oregon, in California, in Nevada, and Massachusetts, and I probably have those wrong too because somebody scribbled on my text here. They weren't sure about this, but there will be 2 outsourcing options for voting this year. Let me explain that. Let's say you're rich as, as a Mitt Romney type, and most of your holdings, say, are offshore, or most of your important business investments are offshore, and there's some other country having an important election where you'd just as soon vote. Well, you can trade your vote here and outsource it and go vote there, and they'll trade back, for one of ours. And that's a pilot project. I'm not sure how well it's going to work. But another version allows you to do the same thing from state to state, and this is what has the Republicans worried and the Democrats worried. For example, all of those people who are now say, I favor Obama, but I'm sitting in this district or this state where I know he's going to win. So it's a waste of my time to vote for him here, but I'd like to outsource the vote over there to Michigan where I'm not sure he's going to win. And so with this option, if you're in one of the lucky states where you can outsource your vote, you can just move it to another location, and you can have much more impact than you would otherwise. All right? Now, we're not even finished here. There's also the kid vote. And the kid vote, the way that's going to work is, a lot of people say this is good for our kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But do they prove that? No, because they don't actually have the kids voting. All right? Kids can vote in several states in this pioneering new project if they put their ages together. For example, the 14-year-old son and the 7-year-old son get together, and as long as they can agree in the voting booth on which levers to press, they count as a 21-year-old, and so we can see what the kids would actually vote for. Pretty fascinating, right? Arizona, I'm sure everybody wants to know about Arizona. What's going to happen there? Well, it's going to be a circus. That's what I predict. But you know that most of the precincts are going to be pretty much fenced in, just like the border is. And even the voting booths, I was able to get a hold of one of these models. Every voting booth is going to be surrounded, encased in these steel tubular devices which keep people, unwanted, undocumented aliens and liberal sorts, from actually being able to penetrate into the voting booth. Interesting. We'll see how that works out. There should be some fireworks, especially since the law enforcement community will be on hand to ask all of the people in Arizona for papers as they come through the precincts there. In Hawaii, I just found this out. People who were born in Kenya will be able to vote if they present their birth certificate. In a number of the large urban areas, thanks to what happened at the Republican convention, empty chairs are going to be able to vote. But it's not clear whether that's going to be counted as like a full vote or a half vote, whatever. Now, Florida, this is interesting. Scientists have said for a lot of years that dolphins are very, very, very intelligent. And in fact, they seem to have brain power equal to our own. They can speak pretty good English, even though very few humans speak dolphin. And so they want to try out in Florida having dolphins vote. And so there's a lot of them right there inside the 12-mile limit and right outside of Miami Beach, various other communities. It's just been a problem technically of working out how do they get to the polls as such, get to the voting the voting booth. But we'll see. Maybe they'll be able to make it, and it'll set an example for all. In New York and various other New Jersey, surrounding states there, all of the body scanners in the airports are going to be converted into voting booths. Yeah, because people are tired of them anyway. And besides, this is going to be one of the few cases where you'll actually be able to have a record. You'll be able to have a record of your vote because, it takes a picture of what's going on there. Anyway, that'll deter fraud, I suppose. Well, because of the tremendous outreach that the Republican Party has made here to dismantling women's rights this year, a number of states are going to celebrate that by allowing husbands to correct their wives' votes, or boyfriends to correct their girlfriends' votes, or simply to instruct them how to vote, because it just goes along with demonstrating that it's not important what women think. They shouldn't be given individual prerogatives. And because we are in that modern age where people watch TV and do mindless things instead of actually, digging deep, we're going to make it possible for people in a number of states to vote via America's Got Talent and American Idol and shows like that, where the two presidential candidates sometime in October are going to show up on stage. People can call in and say, I like him, I don't like him. Pretty fast, huh? We'll know the results quickly. Same thing, Facebook, Twitter. They're going to try out a pioneering project, and we're going to count those votes in 35 of our states if people decide to just vote that way. And finally, in California, here's one I like. If you're cloned, all of your clones can vote. I'm pretty excited about that because I've been cloned, given my important responsibilities. I've had to be cloned over the years. And all of my votes get counted. For example, if my clones and I do not agree on everything, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because all of us get a voice. Isn't that exciting? So I bet you didn't know about most of these exciting new developments. I'm pretty sure you haven't heard it on TV. That's why you come to this particular show on this particular access channel to find out what nobody else is telling you about what's going on out there in the big world. And I didn't have really any chance to get to other stuff because there's just so much to say about our, presidential election season and all of the things that are in turbulence right now. So we'll get to some of that other stuff next time. I want to talk about popular names, and I want to talk about some new developments in the justice system. I hear we're going to have genetically modified cops, and that's an interesting subject for you. We're also going to have cool and unusual punishment in an attempt to get people off the streets. I'm going to tell you why next time, maybe, if it's not already solved. The NFL referees who are on strike and the Chicago teachers who are on strike are going to exchange roles because that's what they really wanted to do. So in the next little while, I'm going to be keeping an eye on all of you and everything. And the reason I'm going to be doing that is because I have to know what's going on so that I can come back here and tell you what's going on. All right? And I guess I just had one more thing to say. I wasn't really here tonight. I took the night off, and I'm sitting home watching this. I'm out of service because I let one of my clones take a shot at doing the show himself. And I think he did a really fine job. He did a really fine job. I've enjoyed watching it from home, and I might let him do some more in the future. And so until we meet again, I just want to tell you there's a better day coming if what you want is a better day. All right? And if what you want is more of the same, you get that too. And in this political process of ours, however you view the eventualities and the personalities on stage, it is important for you to go out there and do what you can to have your voice heard. So keep thinking about that, folks, until the time comes. And be good to yourselves and be good to other people as well. And then you'll all feel better about how you feel about each other, like I feel about all of you. Good night.